expert guide to playing Leader Ash. You better buckle up because this is probably going to be a long one. And the reason it's going to be a long one is because I believe that leaders in general, just as a class, are the most difficult of the four classes to play because they are the most involved. You are really all about doing multiple things. Not only is it expected of you to contribute in melee combat, it's also expected of you to contribute in ranged combat, and it's also expected of you to contribute with your ability, your leader aura. And of the 3 available leaders in the game at the moment, Leader Ash is the most difficult of the 3 because he is kind of the hybrid character. Whereas Annie is clearly meant to be like a ranged leader, and Arthur is clearly meant to be a melee leader, even though at the time of the making of this video, he's bugged to where his aura applies to range damage as well, but he's clearly meant to be a melee leader. Leader Ash is a hybrid. He's meant to provide support to melee and ranged. So I think he's the most difficult to play because you really have to rely, you're juggling not just when you're supposed to be dealing melee damage, but also when you're supposed to be dealing range damage, and also when you're supposed to be proccing El Jefe Grande and spamming finishers or getting dismemberments in order to proc it. So he's very involved, and leaders in general are already very involved. So it's very difficult to play this character, to play them well. And there's also multiple builds that you can go with on him, and you can't really go wrong on any of them. I'm going to go over every single one. I'm going to go over every single perk and talk about the pros and cons of every single build that you can possibly run on this guy, and why I run the build that I run when I play Leader Ash. So first, let's break down his abilities. The first one here is Show Up and Blow Up, which is an active skill that generates an explosion, damaging enemies' balance bar. There's really 2 ways you can use this. You can either use this as a means to break the balance bar of a possessed unit and kind of just save it for that purpose. You can do that, or you can use it to break the balance bars of all the like general mobs that wind up getting spawned when you're on like the dagger or the pages step, because this ability will actually like instantly empty the balance bar of every basic unit that's not possessed, assuming there's no sort of like weird thing going on, like if it's a warlord and they have that you know, buff applied that makes it so their basic units can't get their balance bar emptied out. That's an exception, but otherwise you can hit Q to stun a bunch of units. So like if a bunch of portals open up, you can run in the middle of them, hit Q, and you'll stun everything and make it really easy to kill everything. I think more often than not, the smarter play is to save it for a possessed unit whenever you can, because although it will not instantly stun them, it does do a pretty significant amount of balance bar damage. I will say that I've seen people claim that Leader Ash is crazy good because of this ability. It's not that good. It really isn't. It's just not. Like, the other thing too is that you don't really want to use it on a bunch of units, because what can happen is say a bunch of portals spawn, you run into the middle, hit Q, you break the balance bar of everything around you, and then a unit gets possessed. That thing's not possessed. It's not stunned anymore. Same goes for like dismemberment. Like the second they possess something, they get all their limbs back, they're no longer stunned, and they're at full health again. And so you don't want to do that, and then it turns out, oh, now my Show Up and Blow Up is on cooldown, and I've got to deal with a full health possessed unit that now is going to be even harder to stun. So that's something to keep in mind whenever you use this ability, but those are your 2 options, really. His big aura ability is El Jefe, which is an aura that affects all survivors within range, increasing their fear resistance and the damage they inflict. So the damage percentage is 15%, and the fear resistance is 20%. Just by itself, that's meh. I mean, 15% damage to your whole team is pretty good. The fear resistance is the big thing. It's really huge, especially if your team upgrades their fear resistance early on. It basically, like, I've played Demon before against, oh, someone's gonna be like, you've played Demon? What? I've played Demon before against a leader Ash, and it is certainly difficult to play against a good leader Ash who procs El Jefe Grande constantly, because it basically means you're never going to be able to possess anyone on the team. Now, granted, that may not matter as much depending on, you know, what level you are and which demon you're playing, because all you need to do anyway is just spam basic possessions, but it is an interesting thing to make it basically make fear a non-factor for the whole team for the entire game, which is one of the reasons I think El Jefe here is so good. His third ability is Old Friend, where you start the match with a chainsaw. That's pretty good. The one thing I do want to note on this, though, if you are in a game with an AOD Ash, please drop your chainsaw for him and at least ping it and see if he wants it, because he has the ability, a weapon mastery for a chainsaw, so please drop it for him. Yes, it's only a 5% difference, but still 5% is 5%. You might as well give it to him and give him that advantage. And if he's an AOD Ash that's like my AOD Ash, where he's specced into one-handed sharps, you definitely want to give it to him, because it's going to make him that much more effective. So please at least try to give it to him. If the AOD Ash winds up not wanting it, cool. But absolutely try to drop your chainsaw for him right out the gate. Otherwise, if you don't have an AOD Ash, it's nice to just start with a chainsaw, because, hey, it's a decent enough weapon, and it's pretty good at setting up enemies for finishers, so you can get El Jefe Grande going. Typically, in my experience, it takes 2 hits from the chainsaw, and then they're set up for a finisher. So that's something to keep in mind. It's like 1-2 swings are decently fast, and then hit F, and you're off to the races with El Jefe Grande. Speaking of El Jefe Grande, this enhances your aura's effects when you perform a finisher or dismember any enemy. It doubles the effectiveness of your aura. This also lasts for about 7 to 8 seconds. I don't have the specific time. It's a long time. And it's nice because if you proc it, you can then benefit from your own aura and follow up with even more damage in the next shot. So, like, that's one of the reasons why it's super complicated when it comes to, like, which melee weapons you're going to pick, because one thing that is relevant, which is not relevant on a lot of other characters, is how long the finisher animation is. Shorter finisher animations are good on him, because then he can get a longer benefit from his own El Jefe Grande. Like one of the finisher animations for the chainsaw is that thing where he sticks it in an enemy's chest and just kind of walks past them. And that animation is only like 2 seconds tops. But you wind up getting like a full 5 seconds of benefit from El Jefe Grande to, like, deliver a follow-up attack or a follow-up shot to a possessed unit, which is really nice. But yeah, you want to be spamming El Jefe Grande as much as possible, either through finishers or dismemberment. But we'll get more into that when we get into the gameplay portion of Leader Ash here. So let's get into his perks. The first one here is Great Influence. The first thing I'm going to do is go over my build, and then we'll discuss the perks I'm not taking and some of the other builds that you can run on this guy. So here's what I'm doing. I'm putting 3 points into Great Influence, which increases the range of your aura skill. It's just nice to have a little extra range to make sure that everybody's within your aura range when you're doing the dagger and the pages. I then like to come down here. Absolutely, no matter what build you're running, you absolutely need to put 1 point into Artful Dodger, because that's going to give you an extra dodge. You don't need to put 2 points into it, just the 1 point, but the 1 point is absolutely essential, because it is going to give you 1 extra dodge, and that's huge for damage mitigation. 3 points to do Industrial Strength. Anything to make leaders tankier is nice. They already have like 1,000 HP, so this gives them like another 200 HP, which is pretty good. So that's why I take it. Industrial Strength is good on pretty much every character, in my opinion. I think it's the best, like, defensive perk that you can get compared to, say, Reinforced Amulet and Improved Amulet. I'm not sure if there's any characters that you, like, wouldn't want to take Industrial Strength on. It's always a good idea for the most part. But we'll get into that on other character builds later on. I put 3 points into Reinforced Amulet. This one is more like a situation where I'm kind of like, there's not really anything else to put it in that's as valuable as this. Like this isn't so much like, oh, I need reinforced amulet as it is. I kind of have 3 points left over. I might as well take 10% damage reduction. But more on that in a minute when we get to the stuff that I'm not taking. I love putting 1 point into stopping power so I can max out these 2 ranged perks. And the reason for that is because I prefer to play Leader Ash as sort of a hybrid character between a warrior and a hunter, where I'm kind of going around and hitting, you know, ads. I'm hitting these AI mobs. And then the second that I hear that there's a possessed unit out, then I know I can pull out my gun and start going for headshots and try to kill them as quickly as possible. And I think that this is very helpful to assist your hunter in taking care of these possessed units as fast as you can. I also think that in general, for damage, you don't really want to rely on melee for damage. I know that I just came out with an AOD Ash video where I put a bunch of points into damage. That's because it's based around solo queue and the idea that your solo queue teammates may not be backing you up in damage as much. But I'm saying that if you have your choice between dealing damage with ranged or dealing damage with melee, you want to pick ranged every time, because ranged just deals way more damage than melee does. It scales much better. So that's why I'm speccing into ranged here. And then 3 points into seeing stars, because balance bar damage is just great. And your bread and butter play as a Leader Ash is typically going to be like swing your weapon until you stun a possessed unit until their balance bar is broken, and then you can kind of back up and headshot them while they're stunned. And in a night, like, the perfect play would be basic unit gets possessed, you hit it, you know, use show up and blow up to take away a big part of their balance bar, hit them with whatever weapon you're using a few times, however many times you need to break their balance bar, and then headshot them. Ideally with some sort of shotgun, depending on what your hunter is using, and then just wipe them out. So then Leader Ash is a very effective character at dealing with possessed units, which is really nice. You'll notice I don't have any points in Devastating Force, but we'll get to that in a second. I put 2 points into Deep Pockets ammo because this is one of those things where, number one, I just like being able to carry more ammo for my team in case they need it. But number two, I think this is necessary depending on whether or not you're going to be using like a shotgun for close range and high damage to take care of possessed units, or if you're going to be playing in a way to where you're using the saw gun to proc dismemberment damage and proc El Jefe Grande. You definitely want this if you're using the saw gun, because the saw gun chews through ammo, and I just love being able to carry a bunch of extra ammo in case I need to use a saw gun, because again, we'll get into that. But the saw gun is a weapon where you don't know if you're going to be using it heading into the match or not. It depends on what the demon is doing. It depends on whether or not you find a good saw gun. It depends on a bunch of different things. So you might need to use the saw gun, and if you do, you're going to want to have 2 points into Deep Pockets. So that's why I'm putting 2 points into that. 1 point into I Could Still Help. This ability is kind of whatever. You know, or it persists even if you're bleeding out or become a soul. That's not going to make a huge difference most of the time, especially because he can't proc El Jefe Grande while he's dead. So he's only going to be giving his base bonus to his teammates. And truthfully, 99% of the time, if you're down, you're about to lose the match anyway. So, I mean, it can help you in a pinch, but very rarely does this actually make a difference. The only reason I have a point in this because I want to get to Echoes of the Aura. I think Echoes of the Aura is worth putting at least 1 point into, because 3 seconds is a decent amount of time, and it ensures that, like, if you're at the dagger and pages step and some goofball on your team walks out of your aura for half a second, that they still get that benefit. Because you don't want to have a situation where, like, you just procced El Jefe Grande and your hunter, who's going to be on the outside most of the time, is just like chilling out there and just barely walks out of your aura, and now they're losing out on a 30% damage increase. because they happen to walk 1 inch outside your aura. This ensures that if they dip out for a second and dip back in, they're still getting that benefit. So I really like having at least 1 point into Echoes of the Aura. Let's talk a little bit about some of the perks I didn't take. Deep Pockets Matchsticks. Never take this. I would never. This is one of those things where I would never recommend on any build putting points into any of this stuff on this tree. Like, the only thing you'd ever even consider is Tougher Than Hell, but it's too far down the tree and you have to go through perks that are just worthless on a leader to get to it, so it's just not worth it. It's too much of an investment in worthless perks to justify taking a 10% damage reduction. So I'd never take any of these perks because Deep Pocket Matchsticks is just not good. 3 matchsticks is enough. Every single person can carry 3 matchsticks. I could probably count on one hand the number of games I've had where I'm like, darn it, I wish I had a matchstick right now, but I don't, and no one on my team does. I've like almost never run into that situation. Light therapy. I actually just got done before I made this video doing a test on light therapy for hunters, and it does make a fairly significant difference at level 2 on hunters, because level 2 is the max you can get to on hunters with light therapy. Leaders could get all the way up to level 3, which is a 35% fear reduction. But when they max out their fear in game, they're literally immune to fear at that point. like when they get jump scared, they literally lose fear right now. I don't know if that's a bug or intended or what. I've heard a theory that it's some sort of case where like their fear reduction is literally greater than the fear that the demon is applying. So like you get to I don't know the exact numbers. I'm just making these up to illustrate my point, but it's like if you have a 120% resistance to fear and the demon is doing 100% fear to you, it's a net like loss of fear on there. It's really weird, but at the moment that this video is made, there's absolutely no reason to put points in either of these 2 perks that deal with fear, because you are basically immune to fear as a leader, especially as leader Ash, because he gets the fear 20% fear resistance at all times that turns into 40% when El Jefe Grande gets procced. Plus he has his pink F upgrades in game that give him ridiculous resistance to fear. So I would not ever put any points into any of these. Coming up here, you don't need to put more points into cardio. It's only a 5 to 10% stamina cost reduction. You would only ever put 1 point into this just to get to some of these. Never put 2 points into this. It's just not worth it. 10% is nothing. So you only ever want to put 1 point into that if you want to grab some of these. Arcane Knowledge. I don't see any reason to put points into this. The only character in the entire game I could ever see putting points into Arcane Knowledge on would be Pablo, because this is only relevant on when you're collecting map pieces, and the only person who's ever really going to care about that is Pablo, because he's going to run off on his own and try to grab pages as fast as he can. You're not really going to be doing that with leader Ash. If you're playing a leader in general, I'd say you want to really stick with your team. You shouldn't be going off alone, so I wouldn't put more than 1 point into this just to get over here. Quicker cooldown, again, you don't want to put more points into this, because at 10%, it's only a reduction of 3 seconds on his ability. A 3-second reduction for 2 point investment is just not worth it. So again, you probably only want to put 1 point into this to get to Master of Influence. I have experimented a lot with Master of Influence. Now, if you put the maximum amount of points into this, what it results in is essentially, if you proc El Jefe Grande, it's going to turn a 30% damage increase into a 36% damage increase, and it's going to turn a 40% fear resistance for your team into a 48% fear resistance. So it's a difference of 6% and 8%. Is a difference of 6 and 8% worth a 1, 2, 3, 7 point perk point investment? No, I don't think it is. I know that I said in my first Leader Ash video before the expert guide that I actually did spec into Master of Influence. No, I do not think that that is worth it any longer. it's just too, like, I don't think if there's any leader that you want to get Master of Influence on, it's Leader Ash because of El Jefe Grande. But I just think it's too much of an investment in worthless perks to get there, and then you need to put 4 points into it to justify taking it at all. So a 7-point investment for such a minimal increase is just not worth it to me. Now, 6% damage increase over the course of an entire match can be significant, but I still just don't think that it's worth it. So I just want to point that out. The people who might be considering taking Master of Influence, that's up to you. You can decide for yourself if you want to take it. I personally don't think it makes any sense for the reasons that I just said. It's too much of an investment for not enough of a difference. Down here we have Fast Forward. Fast Forward is an interesting one. I don't think it's worth investing into just like in solo queue. And that's what this guide is for, is if you're playing solo queue. There's a lot of differences and nuances to how you're going to build your characters if you're playing in a group, because you can coordinate your perks and stuff like that. Fast Forward might have some potential in an all leader comp. That's something that I've seen some people mention for like a full 4 stack, a pre-made group is stacking 3 leaders. I could see potential in having all 3 leaders use Fast Forward and put 4 points into it just to burn through Dagger and Pages super fast. As far as I'm aware, it does stack with other leaders. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but from reports that I've seen from other people, I've not tested it myself. So I hope I'm not wrong on this, but from what I have seen, if 3 leaders all have Fast Forward fully maxed, it does stack. So there's potential there for that kind of a build. But I wouldn't recommend it in solo queue. Down here, Improved Amulet sucks. Moving on. I don't have anything else to say. If you watch my shield explanation video, my shield breakdown, you'll realize that Improved Amulet is just not worth it on anyone that's not a warrior, and it's still probably not worth it on warriors except for Henry, and it's still probably not worth it on Henry. So it's not a good perk. Do not put points into Improved Amulet, please. Down here we have Devastating Force. So this is an interesting one, because I think that Devastating Force, there's potential to put points in here. Like if you wanted to, I could see you maybe doing this. Maybe you take points out of Improved Amulet, take that out, take that out. Let's go up here, max this out, and then put 1 point into Great Influence and do this. I think there's potential for this kind of a build. You could potentially take 2 points out of that and then do this so that you still have 1 point in Echoes of the Aura in case you don't think that you need deep pockets. I think you do in case you do use a saw gun in the match. But maybe you are a crack shot with the saw gun. Maybe you don't miss. And so you don't need to take deep pockets. That could very well be the case. For me, though, the reason that I'm not taking melee weapon damage is more and more I'm starting to realize that, like, especially on a hybrid character like a leader that can do range damage and melee damage, melee damage doesn't matter as much because you are not there to deal melee damage. You're there to break the balance bar and then deal range damage. So, like, let's say I bring up that scenario that I had before where it's like you break a possessed unit's balance bar, you show up and blow up, you hit them with whatever weapon you've got equipped and you break their balance bar. From there, you don't want to be meleeing them because it's less damage than it would be to just shoot them with a ranged weapon. Now, the one exception is the Demi-Elagos because they have serious ranged weapon resistance, but that's such a rare thing that I wouldn't worry about it as much. And still, I believe even with their insane like range damage reduction, you're still probably going to do more damage with a ranged weapon, especially if it's like a boomstick. So I just don't see the need to put points into melee weapon damage. All you really need to worry about is breaking the balance bar and then switching on over to whatever ranged weapon you have and landing headshots. So that's why I'm not putting points into Devastating Force. And then the last word again, same thing applies. It's like you don't need to have extra melee damage. I've also heard reports that the last word doesn't even work. I've briefly tested it, and in my very, very brief testing, it doesn't appear to work. I'd need to do more specific testing with like all my perks unequipped and do it in like a private match or something. But then private matches can be different from live servers. It's very weird. Either way, even if it does work, it's a 50% damage increase just on your final hit. You should never really be getting to your final hit in your combo because their balance bar should be broken by then, and then you switch over to your ranged weapon. So I don't see any reason to take the last word either way. So there's your full perk breakdown. Hopefully that covers everything that you might want to use on Leader Ash. Let's dive into his pink F upgrades now. Now the pink F upgrades are very interesting because there's so many different ways that you can like spec him with his pink F upgrades. It's really hard to decide what, like, where you want to go with which stuff you're going to put points into first. And it's going to vary greatly from match to match. And he probably has the most difficult decision to make when it comes to pink F upgrades compared to any other character. So if you look at this,
I've devised a method to halt its spread.
You could put, I would not put points pretty much ever into melee or health to start. I would pretty much never put points into either one of these. I would maybe, so it's such a tough decision to make. I think right now that leaders, for the most part, especially Leader Ash, because of his aura, are already resistant enough in fear to where they don't necessarily need to take fear reduction right out the gate. I used to do that with Leader Ash. I don't think you need to. It is cool to like immediately get to the point where fear becomes a total non-factor, but I don't think it's like a necessity. What I would do first in most of my matches is if I find out that I have a good support on my team, I'm gonna go shields first, because I want my support to be able to use amulets and beef me up with shields right out the gate. If I don't have a good support, or the support's not near me, or if I find a good ranged weapon, I'm gonna spec into range first, because I want to get that range damage, but more importantly, I want to get that reload speed reduction if I'm using like a boomstick, because that's really important. Because if I, you know, come up and I shoot my gun at a possessed unit and then I got to reload, I need it to be that much faster, because shotgun reloads have a tendency to be pretty slow. I just realized this has nothing to do with the video, but the comp they gave me here is like pretty ridiculous for damage. 3 leaders stacked and the most broken damage character in the game. The AI chose violence against this demon. So yeah, I would either go ranged or shield first. After that, I think I'd go stamina and get that maxed out so you can get that extra dodge as fast as you can. And then from there, I would probably go fear and then health and then melee. Like I said, melee damage doesn't matter as much. Fear, I'd get this in there just so you can get to the point where you're completely immune to fear, which is really nice, and getting to the point in the match where you never have to worry about it anymore. And then an extra 100 health is just a nice little thing to have. It's not a huge deal, but it's nice. So in order, I would say I'm either going to go shield if I have a good support, or I don't have a ranged weapon yet, or the support's not near me, didn't spawn near me, or I'm going to go ranged first. If I picked up a ranged weapon right out the gate, or if I feel like the demon is spawning basic possessions in really fast, or I don't have a good support, then I'll go range first. After that, I'm going to go stamina so I can get that extra dodge. Then I'm going to go fear so I can get to the point where I'm totally like immune to it. Then I'll go health, which is not that important because it's only a 100 health increase, but it's better than melee because you don't really care about melee damage as much. You only really care about being able to deal balance bar damage. So that's what I would do as far as pink F upgrades go. All right, let's take a look here at our ranged weapons and what you want to prioritize. Let's talk about the saw gun first, because the saw gun is the #1 thing that I see people mentioning when you're playing Leader Ash. And the saw gun is really rising in popularity among like people on Reddit, people in the Discord, stuff like that, because the new hot thing now is shooting basic units in the legs. And if you take off a basic unit's legs, it insta-kills them. So because of the saw gun's super high dismemberment damage, the really popular thing right now is to be like, oh, use it to shoot something in the legs and you'll kill them right away. I personally don't love using the saw gun. I don't like the ammo economy on it. I think that it takes too much ammo. If you're cracked with it, it's similar to the crossbow. It's so hard to hit shots because it, along with the crossbow, are the only two projectile weapons in the game. They're not hit scan. There's a travel time on the bullet. And that makes it very difficult to hit shots. It makes it especially difficult to hit it on limbs, which is what you're going to be aiming for with the saw gun, whether it's the legs, whether it's the arms. That's what you want to be aiming for with the saw gun. And it's really hard to hit that because of the projectile travel time and latency in this game. And like, especially in my case, I'm even worse because West Coast queue times at the moment for solo queuers for survivors take like 15 to 20 minutes. So I tend to use a VPN and play on East Coast. That makes it super hard to hit like AI units that are on the move in the legs because their legs are so skinny and they're moving. So it makes it really difficult to hit. I still put it in S tier though, because it does proc El Jefe Grande, which is really, really good. It's skill based. So if you're able to hit shots with it, it's a great option. And it's also the weapon that you want to take, I would say, depending on like the demon that you're playing. So for instance, one of the things you'll run into is a warlord that has that ability where when they use their ability, it makes it so that basic units cannot be stunned. They can't have their balance bar broken. I've had matches with Leader Ash where I become a huge detriment to the team because I can't proc El Jefe Grande anymore because I can't stun anything. And it's like on the dagger and pages step, when you really want to be procking El Jefe Grande as much as possible, I basically can't proc it at all. And that stinks and makes you basically half as effective as you should be. So in games where I see it's a warlord, maybe I'll wait and kind of get a feel for whether or not the demon has that ability. But for the most part, if I see a warlord, I'm probably going to take the saw gun and just assume that they have that ability that stops them from having their balance bar broken. And then I'm just going to go around and shoot people's legs. But it's tough, man, because the saw gun also is not going to do as much damage on like headshots as like a shotgun, so it's not going to be as helpful at taking out possessed units. So it's really, more than anything, I'd say it's a preference thing. If you want to take the saw gun, if you're good at hitting shots with it, go ahead and take it. Now, as far as using the saw gun itself and how you want to use it, like I said, aim for the legs, aim for arms. That's how you get limbs chopped off and you're able to proc El Jefe Grande. So that's what you're doing. On basic units that aren't possessed, don't aim for the head. Aim for their limbs. And if you care about like killing units and you're more of a leader that's interested in like taking out all the ads, which I don't think you should be. I think you should be helping out with like possessed units, because to me, in an ideal world, it would be support and warrior takes care of ads. Hunter and leader take care of possessed units. Warrior's gonna chip in on possessed units as well to break their balance bar or dismember them, but for the most part, it's a 2-2 split on whose job is taking out ads and whose job is taking out possessed units. And I think leaders should be in on taking out possessed units, because a good support is gonna use like a revolver or something and just go around and be headshotting units, or they're going to use a melee weapon and go around killing things with melee. And that's where supports can be effective in combat, because they don't deal a lot of damage. So you could take the saw gun if you want. It certainly is good at procking dismemberment so that you can proc El Jefe Grande. But that's personal preference. I don't love it. For my money, I like taking the boomstick. You can't really go wrong with any of the shotguns. The boomstick's the best gun. I'll put these other two shotguns just below it. Boomstick's the best gun in the game. If you find a really good boomstick, priority should go to your hunter. But if for some reason you're in a match where your hunter's not using a long gun, absolutely use a shotgun, because a shotgun is fantastic for damage on possessed units. Like I mentioned earlier, the god tier play is to get in there and scrum with the possessed unit, hit them, break their balance bar, either by using your Q or a combination of that and your melee weapon. And then you can back up, headshot them, and do big damage with the boomstick. In some of my best games, I just run the lobby doing stuff like that. Like, just balance bar break with like a sledgehammer, and then just back up, headshot, and it's very frustrating to go against as a demon, I can assure you that. So I love using shotguns on this guy, but only if your hunter is not using it. Same goes for double barrel and shotgun. If you can't find a good boomstick, or you find a good version of these that's higher rarity, pretty much with all three shotguns, no matter which one it is, you're taking whichever one is the highest rarity. But if everything is equal rarity, you're going pretty much in this order. You're going to do boomstick first, then double barrel, then shotgun. Double barrel and shotgun's kind of a toss-up depending on whether or not you want a larger clip for a little less damage. For the most part, all three are very close in damage, and you want to take which one has the highest rarity. After that, I would say that, let's say you don't want to take the saw gun, because the saw gun, you can't hit shots with it, or you just don't like it and you want to be contributing damage to possessed units like I do. And let's say you can't take a shotgun because you got an Evil Dead 2 Ash on your team, a Hunter Ash who's hogging all the ammo because he just found a really good double barrel. What you want to go with after that, I'd say, is like a Blundy. The Blundy can be dangerous because of its reload speed, and because you are a leader and you don't have access to that level 5 ranged ability that gives you even more reload speed reduction. You got to be careful with this. It's certainly like just a straight downgrade from using something like the boomstick. You also don't get the benefit of that last word perk that makes it so, or last chance, whatever the heck it's called. The sister perk of the last hit in your combo, the thing that makes it so the last shot in your barrel does extra damage. You don't have that as a leader, so that makes this even less viable than it normally would be. But I still like it because it's a good high damage weapon, similar to what the shotguns are that will assist you in taking out possessed units. It's the same reason I would put the hunting rifle up here. Although, actually, I'd probably put the hunting rifle in C tier because, again, it's a long weapon, and you don't want to take it over a shotgun. If a long weapon is an option for you as a leader, you probably don't want to take the hunting rifle. You probably want to take one of the shotguns. So I would actually put that a tier below. The crossbow is fantastic for the same reason the blunderbuss is, if you can hit shots. It's entirely skill dependent. Again, I think it's one of those things where it's really, really tough to hit shots with this thing. I'll put lever action D tier. Absolutely, I would never ever take the lever action. Crossbow is a tough one because I would never take the crossbow just because of how difficult it is to hit shots with. I will say that it's maybe a little more viable than it would be on a hunter, purely because you're tankier than a hunter is, so you're going to typically be closer to the target than a hunter will be. But also, for the most part, you're only going to be shooting possessed units if they're stunned and they can't, get out of the way of your shots anyway, and then it's easy to hit your shot. So I'd actually say that it's up there with the blunderbuss. But it's entirely skill dependent. If you can't hit shots with the crossbow, don't take it. And then last, I would put pistol and revolver down here. Pistol I would actually put in D tier. Revolver you can take if you, for some reason, I've seen people say that they like playing Leader Ash as a character that takes out ads. I wouldn't recommend that. I think because they have a bunch of perks and range damage, that they're more effective at contributing as like a pseudo hunter and taking out possessed units. But if you want to be a leader that just takes out ads and helps out like your support, then the revolver is the way you want to go. I wouldn't recommend taking the pistol. The pistol is a weapon that's too low damage and has terrible ammo economy, so I would never take this on a leader. The only people who should really be taking pistols are like your warrior, and they're probably just going to be taking the pistol to stun lock possessed teammates, which again, you're playing leader Ash, so that's basically not going to be an issue as long as your teammates stick near you. So the pistol and lever action rifle I'd never pick up with leader Ash. Melee weapons. This one will be interesting. Let's see here. I don't like going for dismemberment on leader Ash. So I'm just going to tell you right out the gate, the way I'm going to be ranking these weapons is under the idea that you don't really care about dismemberment with your melee weapon. You're mostly focusing on breaking people's balance bars and using finishers to proc El Jefe Grande. So like hunting knife, you might be like, oh, that's pretty good for dismemberment, like high dismemberment, high attack speed. Like I don't rate it that high because I just don't care about dismemberment as much. Leaders also don't come with a perk that enhances dismemberment damage, but they do come with a perk that enhances balance bar damage. That's another reason why I think you should focus more on balance bar damage when it comes to melee specifically. As far as where I would rate these, Sledgehammer's S tier. Sledgehammer's great on you because it just does a crazy amount of balance bar damage, which is always fantastic. It's going to make it that much easier for you to break enemy unit balance bars and be able to spam your finishers so that you can proc El Jefe Grande. I love the Sledgehammer. I like the Chainsaw for the same reason. Chainsaw, I think they're both the same. Like, even though at the end of the day, the Sledgehammer does more balance bar damage, which is relevant for possessed units. For basic AI, I think they're the exact same. They both require 2 hits at base in order to break the balance bar of a basic unit so that you can use a finisher on them. So they're both kind of even in that regard. I'd still put Sledgehammer like slightly ahead because it does do more balance bar damage, and that becomes relevant for possessed units. After that, I'd probably put the shovel and the bat in A tier. Again, really solid balance bar damage. Not much more to say. I'm just kind of thinking about where I want to put the axe and the sword. The axe and the sword both have decent balance bar damage, which is surprising. I think they're in the same tier, both of these. It's kind of like, hey, if you can't, find a Sledgehammer, or for some reason, like let's say you drop your chainsaw for an AOD Ash, you can't go wrong with any of these 4 if you can't find a replacement chainsaw or a Sledgehammer. These 4 are also very good on him. These ones have decent. The shovel is just like a slightly worse version of the Sledgehammer, basically. But these ones have same goes for the bat. But then these ones have like pretty good balance bar damage in exchange for much higher dismemberment. So it's kind of a trade-off. Dismemberment again is not going to be as relevant to you because you're mostly going to be proccing your El Jefe Grande with finishers, not with dismemberment. But it's it's just an added bonus. Hey, maybe you chop off a limb while you're trying to stun somebody's balance bar and then you proc El Jefe Grande. That can only be a positive thing. After that, I would probably say hunting knife would probably be in B tier just because it does have high dismemberment. It's not great at like getting you stuns and stuff, but it can proc dismemberment. Again, you don't have any perks that help you with dismemberment, so I still don't think it's a very good option. I would actually probably put it lower. I'd maybe put the meat cleaver and the pickaxe here because they're both blunt weapons that are going to be okay for balance bar damage. I've used even a legendary meat hammer with leader Ash before, and it kind of stinks. It's still nice because it does allow you to get finishers off, and the nice thing about these two compared to some of these like slower weapons is that it pretty much guarantees that you're going to get finishers off. You're not in any danger of like accidentally killing the unit because you did too much damage. because maybe you've got other leaders on your team or something, or you're beefed up from your own El Jefe Grande and then you accidentally kill the next unit you're attacking. These are going to ensure that that doesn't happen because they're low damage, high speed. So that's a nice thing here. So I would definitely put that in B tier. After that, I would probably have... boy, these all four of these are not very good. I would honestly put all of these in D tier. I wouldn't pick up any of these with him. The spear especially is really bad because it's not that fast. I mean, I guess it's got decent range, but look at the dismemberment. Dismemberment's really bad. These ones at least have decent dismemberment on them. But again, I don't think you should really be focusing on dismemberment when you're playing as Leader Ash. I just don't think that it works very well. I think balance bar is the way you want to go when it comes to melee. And then if you do want to proc El Jefe Grande via dismemberment, then saw gun is probably what you should be using. All right. Let's check out a little bit of gameplay here. I lost what I just went and found the fastest match where I played Leader Ash that I could. I think we wind up losing this game, but I just wanted to show a little bit of gameplay and talk a little bit about how you're going to play him. So he is the most, and leaders in general are the most involved characters that you can possibly play. It requires a whole lot of thinking. It's really rough. It's not easy to play leaders. I wouldn't recommend starting out with them, but that's why this is an expert guide, is to try to get you used to playing a character that could be so complicated to play, because it's such a balancing act between, okay, when should I be meleeing and spamming finishers, F-chaining in order to proc El Jefe Grande? When should I be meleeing to just take out ads and help out my like support? When should I be pulling out my ranged weapon in order to deal with possessed units? Like, when should I be doing all these things? Basically what I do when I'm playing Leader Ash is, first of all, make sure that you're kind of in the middle of your team so that everybody is benefiting from your aura. Don't be a leader that like kind of hangs out near the edges. Like, you'll see here, I'm like in the middle of the objective to try to make sure that I'm giving everybody the benefits of my aura. Don't be like hanging out on the outskirts or something outside of the melee. You're also the second most tankiest character next to your warrior. So it's like, hey, make sure you're in there and tanking shots along with your warrior. You guys are the two people who are going to be in there and tanking shots and breaking balance bars. So that's kind of your role, is you're going to be in the center, you're going to be in the middle of everything and helping out in that regard. What I like to do is I'll go around and break balance bars if I can. This match is again against a warlord that has that ability where you can't break balance bars when they have that aura effect active. But you want to go around and spam finishers, and then the second, be like, listen as much as you can, and the second you hear that rawr sound that indicates that something has just been possessed, make sure that you're on the lookout and you're going and chasing down that possessed unit. Don't be focusing on ads ever when there's a possessed unit on the field. Like right there, I just used my Q to break his balance bar. I follow up with a shot. That was perfect. You see, that right there is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, that is the ideal scenario right there. Let me play that back. This is exactly what I'm talking about right here. So possessed unit comes out. First of all, I'm like focusing on ads, but I see the possessed unit is out. I give him a quick shot. I reload. Now I'm going to use my Q. That does big damage to his balance bar. Shot breaks the rest of his balance bar. Now he's stunned. Head's there, sitting there. Boom, big headshot. He's gone. So that's kind of the ideal scenario right there. So even right here, to critique my own gameplay, I would say right there, you probably want to get in there and melee. Like that second possessed unit, get in there and melee instead. And break their balance bar. Then you can go ahead and headshot them. So that's really what you want to be doing. Spam finishers as much as you can. And then the second you hear a possessed unit has just spawned, has arrived on the field, stop what you're doing and focus on them. start meleeing them, and then once their balance bar is broken, follow it up with a headshot and help kill them. That's pretty much what you want to be doing with Leader Ash here. I'm trying to think of what else you want to do. Oh, if you're using the saw gun, shoot at limbs, shoot at legs, shoot at arms. Personally, I would say if you're gonna use the saw gun, make sure you always have enough ammo saved to where you can like use it on a possessed unit. Don't like waste all your ammo trying to proc El Jefe Grande and then you're out of ammo and now you don't have anything to help with possessed units. Always save it like at least a couple of clips worth of ammo so that you can actually help contribute to killing possessed units, because that's one of the most important things. Otherwise, if you take like deep pockets and you have it at level 2 and get an additional 15 ammo that you can carry and you got a ton of special ammo on you, go ahead and shoot at legs and try to take out basic units as much as you can. That's kind of a cool thing if you are going to go with saw gun, because then that basically means that not only are you going to be taking out ads left and right very, very quickly, you're also going to be proccing El Jefe Grande frequently, which is really nice. And keep in mind that if you do shoot something in the leg or the arm and it doesn't take off their limb right away, it may require a follow-up shot. Don't panic and be like, it's not working. Like sometimes it takes more than like 1 or 2 shots to take somebody's limb off, depending on their perks and stuff. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it. I've went over pretty much everything as far as gameplay is concerned. Like right there, always try to, hey, steal finishers from your teammates if you have to. Absolutely steal finishers from your teammates if you have to. The only time you shouldn't is if you have a teammate near you who's super weak, like a support, and you're like, I don't really want to like take away that finisher because they need to use, get those iframes so that they don't wind up going down. But otherwise, if it's like your warrior is in there and attacking somebody and they're still super high HP, go ahead and steal the finisher, because you're going to proc El Jefe Grande, and that's good for your team. But it's very involved. There's a lot of moving parts here. It's probably the single toughest character in the entire game to play. So just keep that in mind before you choose this character. But I hope this guide helped you. As always, if you made it this far in the video, over 50 minutes in, I thank you. And also don't forget to subscribe if you did make it this far. And as I just said, I hope that this video helps all of you. I hope it makes you a better player. I hope it makes you a better Leader Ash. And I hope it informs you better in terms of like what perks you want to bring. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hey, thanks for watching as always, folks. The next video for expert guides will probably be on either Henry the Red or Hunter Ash, so you have that to look forward to. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.